I sold my soul for chrome while mixed with card. Yes, I'm splashing in fashion, I can't take no loss. I rock Junior on wannabes, I got no heart. I put endless the denim on rims on my car.
I got a Republican doctor. Made my ass great again, my God. Know you mad now, enchilada. When bitches touch me, you get messy like soda.
I sold my soul for chrome while mixed with card. Yes, I'm splashing in fashion, I can't take no loss. I rock Junior on wannabes, I got no heart. I put endless the denim on rims on my car.
I got a Republican doctor. Made my ass great again, my God. Bitch, don't make me rag you, all-star. I'm number one, you can only be Dose, goodbye now.
I got a Chinese girl, yeah, she from Shanghai. She goes to Parsons in New York, got good eyes. I know I love her, only saw her 2 times. I met her at Dover Street Market.
Hey yo, even if my name was Natalie Nunny, bitches still couldn't check me. That spirit to Chanel, they ain't nothing to see. Bitches on TV channeling me. Have a joke about babe, I'm into landscape. I'm red movies, I put 2 knock earrings in Fendi. Then stamp the trench coat Burberry with a COMPETITION, don't see any. Sitting under stars in the city lights. Baby daddy tell me I got pretty eyes. Bitches only eating when I dust crumbs. I stay with that Uzi, I miss +1. I was really in the field with Carla, girl. Now it's heaven campaign. R.I.P. Checking with that bird down when I'm in Harlem.
My niggas that blow like Virgil. I got that duffel.
Ooh, everything we do, you motherfuckers do it too. I be on it too.
Hey yo, can y'all hear me? Alright. Just gonna make sure that my I'm gonna keep letting the music play because I kinda like it. But if you're watching, let me know. I'm gonna check the audio myself just to make sure everything's alright. And we're gonna get into it, bro. It's gonna be a quick stream today though, I'm not gonna lie to you. I have to go to work pretty soon. I was sleeping a lot of the day, you already know how it is. So hold on. Alright, I don't think the music is playing anymore, but that's fine. So, what's good, bro? What's the word, bro? So, I have to go get some water. What's up? Welcome to the stream, bro. So welcome to the stream, boys. Got nothing really going on too much today. Again, it's gonna be a quick stream. I'm gonna talk to you guys about pastoralism, diets. It might get a little bit into testosterone. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little bit behind on that video that I was gonna make on the African testosterone on the herdsmen, but it will be coming. I hope, hopefully. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I wanted to talk about that because it's something that I've seen a lot with looks maxing. Not even looks maxing, but not only looks maxing, but just like men's health, self-improvement spaces. I've noticed there's been a big move towards more, I won't even say ethnic diets. I guess ethnic diets would be like one way. Is it me or is my gain too loud? Hold on. Yo, am I good? Yeah, I don't know, something like my mic always goes in red. But yeah, I know it is what it is. But yeah, no, like I noticed it with like the ethnic diets or, the diets that a lot of people recommend. Everybody's recommending raw milk and raw meat all the time. And it's a funny story about this because this diet kind of is kind of what represents sort of like ancient historical diets, there's this big obsession in the looks maxing manosphere space, in certain particular areas where people are obsessed with like these types of diets, raw, carnivore. I think keto is kind of like similar, right? I forgot what keto is. I think keto is like I don't know if there's like no dairy, or no, keto is like low carbs. I'm pretty sure. I don't know, something like that, right? But everybody's kind of obsessed with eating raw meat and raw milk, and I mean a part of it's because like it's cool, it's based, and hey, I'm not against you trying to be any of those things, but some of it I think just goes a little bit too like, you know what I mean? It gets a little bit too, I don't know. It gets a bit performative after a while. But if you've watched my videos, you'll kind of know that those two things, those two elements of a diet are pretty much are characteristic of pastoralist societies, aka people who herd animals. So like cattle herders, horse herders, or any type of, there's even reindeer herders. I was actually pretty surprised when I found that out. And these are like the kind of the diets that these types of societies tend to have. And interesting thing about them is that usually men in these these kind of cultures, they're a bit more, they align more with like kind of manosphere taste. They're more aggressive, they're more masculine, they're more patriarchal. Hey, I'm happy to say myself that I come from one of these societies, you know what I mean? I'm South Sudanese. If you guys know anything about South Sudan, aside from the people being as tall as ever, which I don't really benefit from that much, I'm only 5'11". One of the things South Sudan is known for a lot, if you know, is cattle, right? You're like, Africa's like well-known cattle herder. Someone says, I drink so much milk. Yeah, I mean, and that's good. That's good. I don't think it's bad, But yeah, like these societies, again, like they're known for being violent, a little bit kind of, like it's based. That's the main thing. It's based. It's kind of cool right now, And funny story about that, I was actually arguing with my friend about, milk consumption and who's the true pastoralist, because I got into a debate with him like around last year about who was it in Africa who started pastoralism. That's another, topic in itself, who were the first herders in Africa and who were the people who developed this diet first. That's something completely different, but it did give me like a window to look into like how herder societies kind of, eat their food, why they eat the way that they do. And that's why I made a lot of like pastoralist and lactose tolerance content like a few months ago. And so I guess that's something I'm gonna dive in now. Another thing about it too, it's not even just when it comes to Africans, like, maybe I can show you this, like there's also an obsession. I don't want to say obsession. I don't want to sound like I'm hating, right? But there's like also people like an admiration, I'll say, right? It's a better word, for the Yamnaya culture, the steppe cultures, the herding cultures of Europe and the Eurasian steppe is where Indo-European, the language that I'm speaking now, or like a language, I'm speaking a language that belongs to that group now. These were kind of like the origins, and so it's like a lot of, the looks maxing, manosphere, they always make comparisons to like ancient populations. And this is one group of people who they really, really like, because these men were a lot more, when they came in and they were taking over Europe. If anything, I'll show you guys. I'll screen show you guys. And what is this guy saying? It says the Irish probably got the most tolerant. Yeah, I don't know if I guess Irish probably, because I just know it's Northern Europeans who are like the most lactose tolerant. And this guy said Bantu farmer. What about the Bantu farmers, man? My favorite Bantus, the Zulu, they weren't full pastoralists, but they had like some pastoralist element in their culture. It was actually pretty interesting when I found that out. But yeah, like with the Indo-European culture, so this is the video we're gonna watch later, but with like the Indo-Europeans, let me actually see if I can find the expansion. Indo-European expansion. And this is stuff that I'm not the most knowledgeable about, right? But I do just know that this happened. Let me see if I can get it to, I want to see like the full map. Here it is, right? So yeah, I don't know if the Indo-European expansion was just the Yamnaya culture. But essentially, bro, what I do know is that you had steppe cultures, people who were like horse herders. You know, they relied a lot on milk and meat. People say that people really emphasize the meat part, but I think like the thing with a lot of pastoralists, it depends on the group, but typically milk is a lot more of a reliable. It's not even reliable. It's a lot more of like a consumed like product from animals, because when you're like a herder, like the whole point of it, or like a big point of it at least, is to get subsistence or food from the animal, right? You want food from the animals. So what is the most reliable way to get food from the animals? Well, a lot of it, the times, it's going to be stuff like milk, like animal products that you can get from them. Meat is also another way, but usually milk and dairy products are like a lot more what they kind of rely on. And I mean, hey, I'll be honest, right? Those tend to have a benefit, right? I don't know, like I haven't seen any of the studies about it, but what I do know is that, especially with the Indo-Europeans or Yamnaya, when they were expanding, the men were like, I heard like the men were like, significantly taller, more dimorphic, etc. In comparison to like people from farmer cultures around Europe who were taken over. Hey, it is what it is. Hey, this was like their expansion, right? So they're able to just expand a lot all across Europe. Everybody in Europe now, almost everybody, pretty much speaks some form of Indo-European language. So I mean, that's kind of like a testament, right? And it's the same thing with like when you look in Africa. Let me see, the Nilotes. I'm one of them. Expansion. Nilotes expanded pretty late, but it was a lot more when Nilotes became a lot more animal reliant. I don't know if there's any maps, but yeah, I mean, yeah, them. We're not as relevant as them, unfortunately. But I mean, these were kind of like Western Eastern Nilotes. They were able to expand. Bantus expanded the most, but in all fairness, the reason why is because there was just a lot of hunter gatherers, so Bantus were just able to outpopulate everyone, and Nilotes were able to just like after Bantus was expanding, or sometimes at the same time were able to just expand over a lot of areas where some Cushitic groups were and other Bantu groups were around the same area. But yeah, that's why like even like Nilotic groups have like a lot of assimilated people, both Cushitic and Bantu. But I mean, that's a little bit more niche stuff. Essentially, like what you gotta know is that pastoralist groups, tend to be aggressive. They tend to be whatever, right? And when it comes to this whole diet thing, I mean, this is a big reason why people look up to them, because they're pretty much seen as like masculine, and a big reason for that, I mean, it's because of lifestyle and diet, of course. It says drinking and herder societies are super yeah, exactly, right? If you look at a lot of like East Africans, Nilotes, or like Horners, especially the ones that are herding, yeah, a lot of the times, they are pretty tall. They have pretty good like dimorphism, facial features, right? That's when you're gonna see like a lot of people with like the sharp features, so yeah, definitely like that's that's going on a lot. But yeah, but yeah, going back to the what I was saying earlier, I had like a debate with a friend. We were talking about the origins of pastoralism in Africa, where this kind of culture came from, and a big emphasis was around the diet. People who are mostly lactose tolerant, people who have certain consumption rates. And one interesting thing we kind of looked at was like lactose tolerance genes. And actually there was a study that I want to show. So actually, there might be, I might show a few things, because specifically what I'm looking at, there was like a lactose tolerance gene, or a study, I should say, that was looking specifically at Sudan, and it was also comparing some other neighboring East African regions. Let me see. I'll just show you guys the what do you call it? Let me see if I can find. There's a specific map that I have to find, but I don't know where I put it. Let me see. Yeah, my apologies, guys. I'm a bit disorganized today. Oh wait, maybe I can find it this way. Hold on. Africa LCT gene map. Okay. Let me see if I can find the one that I'm looking for. Africa, I'm not gonna lie, Africa is pretty interesting because there's like a lot of lactose tolerant genes that exist. Like a few of them that have developed in Africa with like certain pastoralist groups, and then others that are like from other parts of the world. If only I can see them, I can find a good map that really yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to find one. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can find it. Let me see. It says the first African we were the first. No, that was what I was debating the friend about, but it was like there's a lot because if you're gonna go back and look at like ancient, like sites when it comes to like who were like the first pastoralists in Africa, there's just like a lot of like what I'll say if I'm gonna be like absolutely neutral is it could have been Nilo-Saharan groups or Nilo-Saharan related groups, and also Afro-Asiatic groups. I think there's like you can make an argument for the Afro-Asiatic groups, but you could also make one for the Nilo-Saharan. It gets pretty. I think I might have to do like an entire stream to tackle that, because I think there's arguments that could be made for both sides. But I will say, I guess from just like a linguistic and archaeological point of view, you can maybe argue Nilo-Saharan, but if you're talking about like the origins of the cattle and who has the most lactose tolerance genes and who is more likely to actually domesticate the cattle first, you can make an argument for Afro-Asiatics. But definitely I can say maybe, there was some, it worked in unison. Maybe the groups could have been neither, you know what I mean? It's kind of very hard to say, but yeah, that was actually like the main thing my friend and I were arguing about. But yeah, I mean for sure, like if you look at like a lot of the I guess the more studied groups, ancient cultures, you can see they're a little bit more Afro-Asiatic leaning. Like Savannah pastoral Neolithic, obviously we know they were not the first pastoralists, but it's an Afro-Asiatic culture that is very studied, right? So you know what I mean, you just have a lot more information on that. With the Nilo-Saharans, I think the oldest you can really go is if you're gonna go with like the Wadi Hawara culture, and even that culture you don't really know if they were actually Nilo-Saharans. It's just like a theory that they likely were. And we know that people were doing things with like animals and cattle before that, you know what I mean? So again, like that's why I say, like, honestly, you can make arguments for both sides. I'm not fully, one side or the other, but yeah, it's just hard, you know what I mean? It's not something I'd even be able to answer in like a stream. I could just like give you the information, you can make your own judgment. But yeah, but I mean, okay, I don't think I'm gonna be able to find this. Let me see. Maybe if I check my Discord. All right, you know what? Right, fuck it. All right, you know what? I'll just say it like this, right? Lactose tolerance genes in Africa, you have like, I think there's like 4 of them. So you have 2 cushitic ones, right? Which one of them exists a lot in like the Afar. They live specifically in like Ethiopia and parts of the Horn. There is another cushitic one, which is the South cushitic one, right? Which is really prevalent mostly amongst the Nilotes. But, you know, these are like Nilotic groups who absorbed a lot of cushitic speakers. And then you have the Arabian one. That one's also mostly in East Africa, right? You'll see it in East African groups, mainly like Cushitic groups. Northern Sudanese will have this a lot of like the Sahelian, not the Sahelian, some Sahelian groups. Even a Shilluk, I've seen even like a Shilluk person had it as well. And then you have the European one, and that's the one you see mostly in like Sahelian groups, you know what I mean? Fulanis. I think Hausas might have it a little bit as well. Those are like the 4 main like lactose tolerance genes. And the way that lactose tolerance works is usually like when you're young, everybody's lactose tolerant. So like when you're a kid, everybody is lactose tolerant. And the way that it works is there's an enzyme called, I think, lactase. There's an enzyme that breaks. There's an enzyme in your body, in your gut or whatever, that breaks down the sugars that come from lactose, right? And that is what allows you to be able to digest it fully. When you're growing up, you don't have as many as those enzymes. But what these specific lactose tolerance do, or these lactose tolerance genes do, is they allow you to keep generating that enzyme which is responsible for breaking down the lactase, which in your adulthood, you know what I mean? So that's kind of like a short explanation of how lactose tolerance works and how the genes work. Now, specifically when you're talking about genes, there are certain identifiable genes and markers that we know and have associated with allowing you to keep on continuing to develop that enzyme, which is responsible for helping you to digest like lactose in your adulthood. And so far, I think we know 4 of them. There might be 5 of them, because I think there's another one in Eurasia. It doesn't exist in Africa, but it exists amongst like, I think like in the Tibetan region and, you know, that kind of area. So, you know, that is kind of what it is. So, and the thing about it, when I'm going to show you this like paper, actually, I don't know if I'll show you the exact, maybe I'll have to show you, let me see if I can, let me find, there's a specific quote, right? And I'll read it to you guys. I just give me a second to find it. So, it's in genetics, okay. No LP associate, okay, yeah. Let me copy that and then go here. Boom. Boom. There it is, right? All right. So the thing with like the Nilotic groups, and when I was looking at the study, because I shared it on my community post like a while ago, and it was actually pretty interesting because this was like one of the main points that I had against my friend, even though like, you know, we'll kind of get through it. But there might be another lactose tolerance gene that exists in Africa, which, I mean, you know, I guess like it's not really that surprising, specifically if you're talking about like Nilo-Saharans, because we know Nilo-Saharans have been herding for a while. So it is possible, right? But here it says, right, and the name of the study, just so you guys know, is let me actually go back. I'm gonna have to go back and find this again. Is the genetic variation of lactase persistence alleles in Sudan and South Sudan. So this is, you know, if you want to find it, this is the name of the study. And, you know, it kind of details like lactose tolerance genes within Sudan. I think it goes into Africa, all of Africa as well. I read this like almost a year ago. So that's why like I'm going to talk to you guys about a specific part of it. But it says, the nilotic populations, right? There's no lactose persistence, that's what it means. Associated alleles were found in the nilotic populations of South Sudan, the Shilluk, Dinka, and Nuer. Due to close proximity of South Sudanese populations to East Africa, it's surprising that there's no evidence for the derived 14010C allele in the nilotic populations. And this specific one, that is the one that is the South Cushitic one, this 14010C allele, right? This is what they found in like Maasais and like Nilotes in Southeast Africa. But the reason why it's there is because they assimilated a lot of like Cushitic groups, South Cushitic groups. The lack of LP-associated alleles in agro-pastoralists, and that's actually another important detail. And maybe I'll kind of go into it. One of you guys in the comments, he actually helps me learn a little bit more about this. So shout out to you. Let me actually get your name. Jack Mabil. So yeah, shout out to you, man. It says the lack of associated LP-associated alleles in agropastoralists. Now, a lot of groups has been observed by Tishkoff et al. 2007. Blah blah blah. Despite intermediate prevalence of lactose digesters, which is around more than 20% in tested nilotic populations, in the early in an early study of lactose digesters in Sudan. The Nuba and Miseria also showed higher LP phenotypes than predicted in this study. These populations are genetically close to the nilotic populations. The LP might be driven by the same lactose persistence might be driven by the same unknown mechanisms / mutations in the nilotes. Also showed says here, figure 1b also shows that observed frequencies of LP-associated alleles in some Sudanese Arab Nubian populations cannot explain the previous observations of lactose persistence phenotype. The difference might be caused by an unknown LP variants or possibly adaptation in the gut microbiome. So that's like a bunch of science talk. What are they saying exactly? They're basically saying this, right? When they tested groups with like breathalyzers and whatever to see how they were able to digest lactose or like milk, how they were able to digest milk. And they compared that with data of people who actually had lactose tolerance genes that they were able to identify. There was more people who were able to digest milk and lactose than in comparison to like percentage wise compared to the amount of people who actually had lactose persistence genes. So let me see if I can actually find this, because when you see the figures, it makes a lot more sense. So let me see. I think the X is the amount of people who they were able to detect who had lactose tolerance genes. And then these kind of ranges, I'm pretty sure they were like kind of the ranges of people who were able to digest like lactose, if that makes sense. So when you look at the Nuer, right, nobody had lactose tolerance genes, but the amount of people, what this dot is supposed to represent, right, and these all represent percentages. The amount of people who are able to digest this is Nuba, not Nuer, my bad. Yeah, so the amount of people who are actually able to digest lactose in comparison, right, is actually higher. And you kind of see the same trend, right? Now the thing with these lines, they kind of represent ranges, but this is kind of like the range that they kind of estimate. So with the Shilluk, it's the same thing. They're able to find some people, that this is when they found the one person with the Arabian allele. And then the amount of people who were kind of like estimate, due to the same type of test. Same thing with Nuers, same thing with Dinkas, same things with Baris. The Mahan, they're like a Nubian group. The Nubians are pretty interesting because they're agriculturalists, but they also have like a lot of admixture, right, from populations that were pastoralists who came in and either like assimilated or conquered like the area. And same thing with this group. This is another Nubian group. The Halfawin, the Nagla, the Hadendua. These are like Bejas. The Bejas were actually pretty interesting because they had the most like lactose tolerance genes in Sudan. Like they drink the most milk. They had the most lactose tolerance genes, and I think for them it might actually be the reverse. The amount of people who were actually able to digest lactose versus the people who actually had the actual genes, it's actually the reverse. what they're basically saying is since these groups all share like some genetic continuity, that it can't be a coincidence that you consistently see more people able to actually digest lactose versus people who actually have the gene that's supposed to allow you to do that. You know what I mean? So it was just like, kind of like some interesting stuff that to look at. Let me look at some of the chats. Let me see. Oh yeah, no, I'm not Dinka Twitch. I'm not Eastern Twitch. I'm from Southern Board. Yeah, I'm from Southern Board. But like Twitchies, they're like pretty similar to us. My mom actually, her lineage. My name is from my dad's side, but my mom, her lineage, it comes from like it goes back to Twitchies guy. Where do Nilotes get their Caucasoid features? I mean, I wouldn't say Nilotes have Caucasoid features. You might have some people who are a bit more like, I don't know, alkaline look. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like some people might have like thinner noses or whatever. I mean, yeah, I don't fully know, right? It's kind of I guess it's kind of hard to really like dictate that. You know what I mean? But I mean, to say Nilotes have I wouldn't say Nilotes have Caucasoid feet unless you're talking about like Nilo Kushites. Like those would be the only people who would realistically have some of that. And then obviously like when we say Caucasoid, it's like what are you comparing Nilotes to? Like you're usually comparing them to like West Africans and Central Africans. They're like probably 1,000 times more tropically adapted than us, because we do live like along the Nile. They lived in like the actual like rainforest, right? So it's like, I guess like that's probably like the main difference. And then I mean too, right? It's probably Nilotes have like pretty good bone structure, right? I see people kind of associate high cheekbones with like Europeans and whatever, but I mean Africans in general have good cheekbones, but I think Nilotes especially, we're just known for like having like sharp features, and we're like pretty skinny. And then maybe in comparison to like a West Central African, we're still tropically adapted, but probably not as much as them, right? So maybe that's why like we look a certain way in comparison. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, like Nilotes, like we're I wouldn't say, we're just black people, you know what I mean? So it's like there's no mix. There's not really any mix from like the outside world, unless you're talking about other African groups that we have. If you're talking about South Sudanese Nilotes specifically, that would make us look one way or the other. You know what I mean? But yeah. So let me actually look at some other stuff I wanted to go through. So yeah, I mean that was like the LCT genes or lactose tolerance genes. I guess aside from that, I mean we can get a little bit into diets, but yeah, and I mean like the main reason why, like the main, and actually what you said here, I think there are other explanations to why some of those groups perhaps could process lactase. Exactly, yeah, and that's what the the paper actually mentioned, right? But the main thing I'd say like against that is like, why are you seeing the same discrepancy happening consistently amongst like related populations? You know what I mean? So definitely like, does it have to be a lactose tolerance gene? No, right? But you also can't rule it out. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean the things too, when I was like talking with my friend about it, is, I mean, it's kind of simple. Why do populations develop lactose tolerance gene, right? It's mainly because your diet, right? If your diet has like a lot of dairy in it, then if one person, and like lactose tolerance genes, you know how genes are, mutations, they can pop up randomly in a population, and once they happen, they like tend to be selected for. Now that doesn't mean that every single group has to be the majority, has to be lactose tolerance all of a sudden, right? There's a lot of populations in East Africa where, and I'm happy you guys said, actually, no, yeah, no, like there's a lot of populations in like East Africa that they have lactose tolerance genes amongst them, right? But they're not, the majority of them might not be lactose tolerant, right? I think like a lot of Horner groups, I think even the Afar, even though they have their own lactose tolerance gene, I don't even think the majority of them even have it, right? It's only like up to like 30% of their population. And again, you also have to remember what lactose tolerance is in general. Lactose tolerance is just you being able to continue digesting milk into adulthood without having any complications with your digestion and being able to absorb more protein and whatever from that milk. That's what lactose tolerance really is. And the thing is with a lot of with South Sudanese groups specifically, right? And this is what I don't want to be butchering your name, but I think it's I'm just gonna assume your name is Ajak, because that's the name of my dad, and that's the way your name is spelled. So Ajak Mabil, right? That's one of the things. Like, I'm happy that you mentioned you and like this other guy you kind of mentioned, and I've actually seen this. And actually, you know what? This is actually pretty interesting because I'll actually show you this if I can get this. If I can get this to show on the screen. If I can get this to show on the screen, that'd be good. All right. This is gonna be tough. I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but bear with me. I'll have to. Damn. There it is. Okay. Boom. No. No, I did it the wrong way. Damn. How am I gonna? I thought I really had it. Okay. Let me try this again. Boom, there it is. All right. Little bit of difficulty with a lot of like okay, yeah, you can just see it here. With a lot of like nilotic groups, honestly, the way that we consume milk, specifically with like, this is Western nilotes, so specifically you're looking at South Sudanese nilotes. This right here is the shulu. If you're looking at the percentages, right, because when you look at like the milk consumption of like a lot of different groups, it tends to be all over the place, generally you'd kind of assume, right, because the whole point of pastoralism, which is actually a main point me and my friend were like when we were debating, this was the main point that he made. When you're a pastoralist, the whole idea is to like eat from it, right? And looking at these groups, when you look at like a lot of groups, the percentages tend to be kind of all over the place. If you look at like some, like the Maasai, for example, their milk consumption is like really, really high. Their milk consumptions are like around 60% or whatever, right? But then you can look at other groups, like there's the Toposa in South Sudan, and their milk consumption is actually pretty similar to like the Dinkas, where it's like a quarter of your diet, like overall. But their meat consumption is a lot higher. You get what I mean? But usually you're gonna have higher milk consumption. And amongst different groups, it kind of differs, right? When you're looking at Fulanis, their milk consumption is around like 30, 40. If you look at like a lot of the Sahelian kind of nomad groups, that's where their consumption rate tends to be. You also look at certain groups as well, and their consumption is a little bit higher. And you can say this is affected by a lot of different things, right? Where you are, if a lot of groups could be affected by modern, conveniences and things like that. So specifically looking at the Shuluk for South Sudanese nilotes, and a lot of South Sudanese nilotes will be pretty similar into this. They're not only pastoralists, they also do agriculture. I know specifically in Dinka culture, it's men who do like herding and it's women who do stuff like farming, right? But then you also have people who do like fishing on the side. But those are like the three main sources of food. When you're young, this is when you're drinking the most milk. This is actually when you're drinking the most milk. So here you can actually see percentage-wise, right, and calories. Obviously, the amount of calories, so from 7 to 12, the amount of calories you're getting from milk right here is around like 269. I think that's how you're supposed to read it. The percentage of milk that actually takes up your diet, that's around 62. So you're like looking at Masai numbers, right? But as you get older, it starts to become a less, it tends to become like a smaller and smaller portion of your diet. Overall, like this is around like 42% milk consumption. But you can obviously see the majority of that is going to be coming from like the kids who really bump that number up. And with the Dinkas and the Nwers, it's like a pretty like similar thing. You drink the most amount of milk when you're younger, but as you get older, you start to drink less milk. And I don't know if that's because of lactose intolerance or if that's just, the culture, right? The older you get, the more of a balanced diet you tend to eat. And, you drink less milk. So then there's less of a need in adulthood to select for lactose tolerance genes, right? You could also put it in the reverse and say, well, technically, maybe the lack of lactose tolerance is why they consume like that. So, I mean, you can really say it's the same way, but I'd pick the first kind of explanation. And I mean, that's kind of like a thing with like a lot of these like groups, right? Let me see. I wanted to look at this. He investigated the diets of these tribes people. I'm pretty sure these are like Southern Nilotes. I don't know if they're like he doesn't name the tribe, but yeah, you know what? We'll watch some of it. I do have to go pretty soon. I do have work in like not even like 30 minutes, so we'll probably just watch a part of this video and then I'll have to go, and then maybe we can finish it next week when I do the next stream.
I flew half.
So yeah, I think he's in Tanzania. So actually, let me see. Yeah.
I flew halfway across the world to interview an elderly tribesman who has never been on camera before. Estimated to be over 100 years old, he is one of the last people on Earth who saw his tribe in its original form before the...
Yeah, now chats and everyone in the chats, I want you guys to make a guess on where this guy, who you guys think he's looking at. Like which tribe, which ethnicity you guys think this guy is from. I'm assuming either like the Toga or Maasai. Like I think it has to be one of the two. But if you guys have any other guesses, tell me in the comments.
Last people on Earth who saw his tribe in its original form before the modern food and technology arrived. So he has seen a transition from the original lifestyle of the tribe to a modern lifestyle that they're living today.
And actually, I watched some of this on myself. A big thing he's going to talk about is like, the whole milk and meat thing, which is why I kind of like really, you know what I mean? Like I talked about like the whole milk and meat. I won't say obsession, but the whole milk and meat kind of trend that I'm seeing everywhere.
And he says the results of this are clear. People are not living as long as they used to. They are becoming weaker, even shorter in height, and less healthy. The most shocking evidence that we can see of this decline is in the tribe's faces. The elder, at least when he was a child, had a traditional diet, which we're going to get into the details later in this video. And you can see that he has good bone development in his face. He has a wide jaw, he has space for all of his teeth, and this is in line with the same physical structure that you see in old photos of African tribespeople from the 1900s. Many of them have very well-developed bones and good teeth. But when you look at the younger children in the tribe today, their jaws are narrowing and their teeth are crowded and crooked. It's really shocking. Now, when I was going around these different tribal groups, I saw hundreds of children and almost all of them had this. It was like right in your face, very stark. Once you see it.
So yeah, this is actually one thing that's like a big point. So I mean, I've talked to you guys about this in like the other lives, but I mean, I think there's a definitely like a bit of truth, which I'm going to give like some credence. And it's that these types of diets where you're consuming a lot of milk and meat, you're consuming a lot of animal proteins. Generally, that is pretty good for you, right? It helps you with your testosterone. Animal proteins are typically better for you, especially for just like muscle development me, I'm a guy who goes to the gym. I'm a gym bro. That's what I'm about, right? So that's definitely one thing about it too. I think when they're talking about facial development specifically, there's two different things, right? There's two different things, and one of it comes to just, the way that you breathe or whatever. It's not really super relevant to the video, but mouth breathing, obviously, it's a thing with like the whole mewing culture, right? Mouth breathing is bad. Breathing in through your nose is good. But another thing about it too is being able to chew a lot of hard food, and that's where they really make a big emphasis on meat consumption, right? Because meat is hard. You have to chew it a lot. You have to chew properly. Versus in America, where people have teeth that are crooked because they don't have enough space in their mouth, because like we eat a lot of soft foods, processed foods, whatever. That's like a really big point that a lot of people like to make, and I think this is the angle where he's gonna go as well.
It's hard to unsee it. It's really shocking. So in the modern world, where I live, we use braces and surgery to hide our signs of physical decay and bad health. For example, people use braces to hide crooked teeth, or some people who have very underdeveloped jaws, they do things like jaw surgery. But here in the tribe, they don't have braces, they don't have surgery, so the decline is right in your face. It's completely unfiltered.
And here's another thing too, is that my friend, he also mentioned that there's like high testosterone, or like not high testosterone, high adrenaline situations definitely could have an effect where, it has an effect on your hormones. And your hormones are really another big thing that drive what your face looks like, because your hormones kind of, determine or help with your development, right? A lot of these dimorphic features, good cheekbones, well-developed face, strong jaw and chin, a lot of that stuff is hormonal. I don't know if you guys seen, but when I compared myself when I was a teenager to now, my chin development, huge change. A lot of that was just like hormonal, and like, me just like increasing my bone mass just as a consequence of going through puberty. So that is actually something that's like pretty interesting to take note of. I wanted to say something else, but I forgot. So I'll just interrupt the video when I need to.
And you can kind of see the collapse of human health happening in real time, right before your eyes. So I sat down with this elderly tribesman to understand what diet he followed when he was younger and the specific modern changes that he says are destroying the tribe's health. So this gives us direct insight into what is causing our own health problems and exactly what we can do to fix it. Let's start by comparing what diet this man had when he was a child. This is similar to the diet that the tribes had for potentially thousands of years that often gave them this good health and good jaw like we see in the pictures. And we're going to compare this to the tribe's diet today. And some of this is going to surprise you. Some of this might even...
I think that guy right here, I think this guy's Randilla.
Pictures. And we're going to compare this to the tribe's diet.
Oh shit.
Today. And some of this is going to surprise you. Some of this might even upset some people. So let's start with the diet. The man told me that the tribe's original diet was only 3 foods: raw milk, which they drank a ton of, raw meat, and cow blood, which they mixed with the milk. He told me that when he was...
Yeah, these are like really big staples of like Nilotic groups, even like with South Sudanese who drink raw blood, like a lot less. Like these are like really big like staples, or like really big, characteristic signs of like not a lot of groups, and it's including Cushitic groups as well. To be honest, a lot of pastoralists in general kind of do it. I do think though that I'm not sure if raw meat. I do like meat. Yeah, I don't know so much about raw meat, to be fair. So that is actually pretty interesting. I'll have to double check up on that.
Raw meat and cow blood, which they mix with the milk. He told me that when he was younger,
Ethiopians eat
everything
meat,
was
you know
raw.
what I mean?
He recalls his tribe eating raw meat. And there was no variety, there was no vegetables, there was no grains, and there was definitely no supplements. Now, the quantity...
Yeah, no, I think that's cap. No grains is cap, no vegetables cap, only meat is cap.
quantity of milk that they used to have was crazy. He says that they would drink...
And I don't even know who these groups specifically are. I just know that they're like Southeast African Nilotes, but yeah, like... Come on, man.
5 of these containers with milk, and they would drink it very fast. Now, these containers are probably about 3 cups, 25 ounces, maybe 750 milliliters. And the way that he described it is that they could drink tens of these containers in a single day. And that sounds like a lot, but the way that they drink, they really down it very fast. I saw that with my own eyes. Now, the milk that they're having isn't the milk that you're going to find in the grocery store. This is fresh, raw milk, straight from the udder of the cow. It's not processed. It's not even refrigerated. And it's filled with stem cells, growth factors, enzymes, and some of those things are destroyed in the modern processing that we have today. Let this sink in for a moment. This tribe's diet, potentially for thousands of years, has just been primarily 3 foods. And that produced visibly robust people. 3 foods only. Now just compare that to what you're doing, or what the average person does, or what the authority.
The thing about it too is like you also do like, yeah, visibly robust, but you also got to remember that like a lot of these groups of people, like people are active all day, right? So their body fat is usually always pretty low. And I think that just adds to like, you know, exaggerating the features. Like it's not only that, okay, yeah, sure, they have good development, but these people are also pretty low body fat. And that's one of the biggest things that determines like how robust and angular your face is going to look.
Tell you to do. You can see how far away we've come from that. These days, people walk into a supermarket and there's a million different products. Meanwhile, the tribe was visibly healthy, just having 3 foods. Now, let's compare the original diet to what the tribe is doing today. So what are the changes in the diet? What are they doing today that is different? The first thing is that they started to cook all of the meat. They started this a few decades ago. They started to either boil the meat or they cook it on fire. So raw meat is seen as something that of the past, no longer what they do, a different time. I was eating raw meat in front of the tribe because that's what I like to do. I've been doing that for many years. And they looked at me like I was crazy. Now that might just be because I was a white man eating raw meat and they couldn't imagine such a thing. But the impression I got was that this is just not what people do anymore, okay? This is of the past, and people view it as primitive and bad somehow. So if we go to the science of what happens when you cook.
All right, yeah, so he's gonna get into like more of the diet stuff and like cooking the food. I'm gonna have to go. I have to go to work pretty soon, so I will head out. I guess one last thing I'll leave you guys with, you know, a little bit of self-promo. If you're not interested, that's fine. Don't bitch at me in the comments. Just just ignore. But yes, my ascendancy school, or Adore Bior, which I just recently renamed it. Basically, you know, help out build your physique, diet, looks maxing, etc., stuff like that. I did add some new stuff to it, so you know you could have like a free trial, different different like, you know what I mean, options with like a plan, you know, if you want. So just that's what it looks like in there. And yeah, you know, just play this. If you've been watching my videos and you actually want to apply the things that I've talked about, join my ascendancy school. I now recently just got signed to a modeling agency and previously had multiple others interested in me. And a big reason why is because I had a good physique. I had an aesthetic physique, more importantly. Now, obviously that isn't the only thing, you know, things like look and things of that nature are important as well. Building an aesthetic physique nonetheless does get you more on point. And that's what I'm gonna help you guys do in there. And there you'll get all of my frameworks when it comes to things like me explaining the diet and the workout training routine that I took to get me where I am today over the past 3 years of me lifting. If that sounds interesting to you, the first link in the description will be there. That being said, peace, bro. Yeah, so I mean, you know, that's the school community, basically, you know, just helping out with, you know, helping you improve, especially your physique, looks, aesthetics, whatever. I'm in the middle of doing that as well. I've been getting like barely any sleep, so I've been cooked recently, but you know, yeah, you know, I appreciate the support. If you're interested, then definitely, you know, check it out. You know, no pressure. If you don't want to, hey, if this is a bit, you know, see it's expensive or whatever, there's no pressure. You know, just enjoy the free content. And I appreciate you, Jack Mobile, bro. You know, I really appreciate it, man. But yeah, with that being said, bro, everyone have a good day. I'm about to go.